The story begins in the eastern continent, where the forces of the barbarians clash with the defending soldiers of the Eldoran kingdom. In the bloody battlefield, heads go flying as the powerful barbarians gain the upper hand and tear through Eldoran forces like paper. Still, the captain of the Eldoran troop, Serafina, refuses to give up on her comrades. She rallies her troops to continue fighting and cut a path out for retreat. Even as Serafina cuts through some barbarian soldiers, she notes that her side has taken too many casualties to have a chance at making it out alive. Suddenly, a new monster appears from the barbarian side. Veor, a giant barbarian elite, shreds through Eldoran soldiers and lands straight in front of Serafina with his bloody blade raised high. Veor easily spots Serafina as the seasoned captain among the common soldiers and challenges her to a one-on-one. Knowing that no one else can stand a chance against this monster's huge blade, Serafina agrees to the fight, hoping to buy some time for her men to escape. She jumps high up and plunges down at Veor, who parries her attack while casually standing. Then, he swings at Serafina with his immense power and sends her flying to the side. Serafina lands on her feet and rebounds to launch another attack at Veor, and the two of them start trading blows in a heated exchange. Although Serafina impressively keeps up with Veor's strength, his overwhelming power still forces her back. Left with no other choice, she uses her ultimate technique that casts a magic enhancement on her sword. Using all her remaining strength, she roars and takes on Veor's final strike. Just as the two swords meet, one of the blades breaks and goes flying into the ground. The Eldoran soldiers watch, stunned, as their captain holds a broken sword in defeat. Serafina collapses to her knees, accepting defeat, and Veor sincerely praises her for holding her own against him for so long. Serafina then asks him to kill her as a warrior deserves, but Veor refuses to take her life. Instead, he flashes her a sinister grin and promises that he'll take her alive and put her body to good use. After this ominous warning, Serafina loses consciousness and wakes up in a dark prison cell, wearing a dirty rag and strong shackles. Shocked, she looks around and gathers her bearings for a bit. She then finally remembers that she was defeated by the barbarians and is now their captive. Once she remembers Veor's final warning, Serafina gets terrified, wondering what kind of torture the barbarians will inflict on her. She wonders if they'll use her as a slave, or if they'll subject her to immense pain for entertainment. In the end, the scariest thought flashes through her mind, and she wonders if Veor wants to use her body as a woman. Since Serafina is still an unmarried young noble, the thought of a brutish barbarian sullying her pure body puts her in serious anxiety. Then, Serafina also realizes that her poor comrades were still surrounded by barbarians after she got knocked out, thinking that they all got slaughtered or taken captive just like her. She feels a crushing rush of despair. In the end, she feels the most worried for the common people of her kingdom, since without the eastern land, their crops will continue to die with no land left to plant. All of these regrets bring the experienced captain to tears, but suddenly, she hears another person's voice behind her. Serafina looks around to see Circe, a female servant carrying some water with her. Serafina takes a closer look at Circe and finds some pliers and tools on her belt, so she thinks that she's here to torture her for information. However, Circe doesn't mention anything about torture, and instead reveals that she's here to prepare Serafina as the perfect trophy for King Veor. She then chains Serafina to the wall to prevent her from moving, and the knight captain braces herself for some brutal torture. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, Veor thinks about visiting Serafina, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Back at the prison cell, Serafina is now nude while Circe washes her body with a wet cloth. Once she finishes cleaning, Serafina asks Circe why she's going through so much ceremony for a slave like her. Circe points out that Serafina's body was filthy from the battle, so she was simply cleaning her up. Circe then makes a casual comment about her appearance, surprised that she's the woman who battled her master for so long. Circe explains that she was expecting Serafina to look more muscular since she can hold her own against Veor, but instead, she's simply a feminine girl. Hearing this, Serafina's ego gets bruised since she thinks a knight like her has no time to look girly or cute. Circe understands her emotions, but she reveals that Veor really likes how Serafina looks. This statement leaves Serafina even more confused, but Circe refuses to explain further. Instead, she quietly warns Serafina that she's never leaving barbarian territory again, all while holding a sharp knife in her hand. Serafina thinks that her end is finally near, and she desperately struggles against her restraints, hoping for a miracle. miracle. As Circe gets closer with the sharp knife and cold metal pliers, Serafina finally gives up and closes her eyes. However, for some reason, Circe only cuts her restraints and trims her fingernails and puts a dress on Serafina's body. As she opens her eyes, Serafina notices the strangely decent clothes, and she realizes that her dress is scented with perfume. She wonders why on earth the barbarians would give their prisoner a scented robe, and wonders if they're preparing her for a sacrificial ritual or something. Before she can ask Circe, she hears a loud roar coming from the surface above the dungeon. Circe confirms that Veor is here, and soon, the massive barbarian king lumbers into Serafina's prison cell. After entering the cell, Veor formally introduces himself as the son of barbarian great chief Olden One Eye. Meanwhile, Serafina observes his massive body and golden eyes, realizing there's no way he's a human being. She then recalls a story from her grandfather about an expedition against the barbarian soldiers. Even back then, the powerful brutes easily overwhelmed the human forces and ripped their hearts out for their rituals. Thinking she's about to face the same fate, Serafina tells Veor that she's not afraid of anyone, and she dares him to do whatever he wants with her. Hearing this, Veor wonders what she's talking about since he has no plans of sacrificing her. He finally explains the real reason why he captured her was to take her as his bride. With just these few words, Serafina's world turns upside down, and all the anxiety in her mind rushes to her face in the form of a beet red blush. At first, she's too shocked to fully understand what's happening, so she asks Veor if this is a prank. When Veor explains he truly wants to marry her, Serafina completely loses her mind. She asks him why he'd marry an enemy, so Veor explains that his barbarian race has no problems with loving their enemies. Then, he goes into a state of fiery passion as he recalls the traditions of his proud ancestors. Ever since the dawn of the barbarian race, their strongest kings would always marry a female knight to honor their passion for the sword. Despite this explanation, Serafina still refuses to become his wife. The sneaky barbarian reminds her that she told him to do whatever he wanted with her, so Serafina is left trapped by her own words. Then, Veor also explains that he's not just marrying her for the sake of a cultural tradition. He recalls their fight on the battlefield, where he felt the sincerity of Serafina's passion for her sword. Facing such a powerful woman, he immediately fell in love with her and decided he'd marry her no matter what. After hearing Veor's sincere confession, Serafina is too flustered to respond, so he turns around to leave the room. Before leaving, Veor promises that he won't force her to marry against her will, so she can carefully consider her decision. After he finally leaves the cell, the shell-shocked knight wonders what's going to happen to her in this crazy dungeon. While waiting for her marriage, Serafina recalls a memory from 7 years ago. Back then, her brother Sidious notified Serafina that she was named as the captain of an expedition to the barbarian lands. Serafina agreed and started leaving to attend her duties, but Sidious stopped her to hand over an invitation to a noble banquet. She was confused and wondered what her brother wanted, so Sidious reminded her that she was still a noble lady with a reputation to uphold. Seeing her brother's intense stare, Serafina stood straight and immediately accepted the invitation. Later, she dressed up in pretty clothes and arrived at Countess Ildhol's mansion for the banquet. Seeing Serafina dressed up in normal clothes, the nobles around her started making comments about her profession. In hushed whispers, all of the venomous elites made horrible remarks about Serafina's appearance, wondering if a delicate lady like her would ever be worthy of leading seasoned warriors in battle. Even though they all knew her real strength, the nobles thought it was a waste for a woman to be as strong as her. Serafina felt overwhelmed by all the negative comments, so she went to a balcony for some fresh air. Then, a few young ladies went out and asked her to join them instead of sulking alone. As the four of them sat together, the young ladies asked Serafina if she was scared of her dreadful job. Hearing stories of monsters and dragons, the ladies wondered if Serafina would be okay in such dangerous situations. Sera smiled and explained that dragons were just imaginary creatures, but the ladies reminded her that she's still going to face the barbarians. Knowing the tales of the brutal barbarians and their horrible treatment of female knights, the ladies tell Sera to stay at home to avoid a brutal end. However, she slams her hands on the table to silence them all. Sera confidently declares that their kingdom has been trying since day one to conquer the eastern lands. In her mind, only by conquering the east could their kingdom gain enough resources to feed their people, so she was ready to fight against the barbarians. Still, the young ladies reminded Serafina that even the prestigious Princess Wisteria, who was her role model, went missing after she faced the barbarians. All of the ladies advised her to remain home and marry a suitable husband, but Sira grew tired of their negative attitude and left the gathering. Afterward, as she headed back home on her carriage, she felt disgusted by the nobles, who dined on luxurious meals while their common people starved on the streets. On her way back, she encountered a poor man being attacked by 3 guys. The boys themselves were starving peasants, forced to rob others for the sake of their survival. Still, Sira jumped in to protect the poor man and warned the robbers to back off. With no way out, the boys tried attacking her with their farming tools, but Sira easily defeated them. The boys wondered if their lives were about to end, but suddenly, Sira took pity on them and gave them her precious necklace. Shocked, the boys thanked her for her precious gift and promised never to hurt another person again. After they left, Sira felt her heart clench from pain at the state of her people. Internally, she made a promise to her people that she would return victorious from the east and bring peace to their kingdom. A few days later, before leaving for the expedition, Sira paid respects to the missing princess Wisteria. Suddenly, her brother popped up from behind, furious that she couldn't find a husband again at the banquet. Serafina reminded Sidious that she was about to fight for their kingdom, but the proud prince firmly told her that women could never fight on the front lines. As he angrily shouted her name, suddenly, the prince's voice shifted into Veor's. Veor advanced towards her and stretched out a hand, determined to make his wife no matter what. As the barbarian grabs her, Serafina's nightmare finally ends, and she wakes up in a cold sweat. She then hears a powerful snore coming from nearby, and she notices Veor sleeping right next to her. In an instant, the sight of Veor's powerful body brings Serafina to her senses, and she draws a cold breath, terrified of handling him as his wife. In a few moments, Sira manages to recollect her scattered thoughts. She screams at Veor for being with her, but he explains that they're currently in his bedroom. Hearing this, Sira gets even more outraged and asks why Veor is naked with her. He ignores her question and instead acts like he's relieved that she's feeling fine after last night. The image in Sira's mind continues to grow even worse, and she thinks that this brutish barbarian forced himself on her. Unable to bear the affront of her dignity, Sira tells Veor to just put her out of her misery. Veor stops her, wondering why she wants to die instead of killing him. Sira points out that a barbarian has no idea what a woman's honor means back in her kingdom, so he has no right to judge her feelings. She also reminds him that she just got defeated in battle, so her honor as a knight also took a huge blow. Veor understands her frustration, but he still thinks it's not enough to justify ending her life. Instead, he encourages her to move on and appreciate her blessing of life. As the two of them argue, Circe enters the room with some clothes for Veor. She realizes that Sira had a misunderstanding and explains that she overdosed on a sleeping drug they gave her. Since Veor didn't expect the drug to be so strong, he felt worried and took her to his own bedroom to watch while she rested. Finally, Sira realizes that Veor simply took care of her instead of compromising her chastity while she was unconscious. Still, she gets mad at him for creating such a misunderstanding. Veor once again glosses over her anger like it's nothing, and instead focuses on getting breakfast. Once he's finished changing clothes, he leaves to eat and tells Sira to come out whenever she's ready. After Veor leaves the room, Sira collapses to the floor, overwhelmed by all the emotions she just experienced. She feels ashamed that a proud knight like her is relying on her worst enemies for food and shelter, and remembers the teachings of her grandfather. Despite training his own granddaughter, Sira's grandfather also felt bad that she was born a woman. Even he told her to marry a husband to find her happiness, just like her brother Sidious. Having heard so many demoralizing words, Sira realizes that Veor is the only person who appreciated her knighthood and found it attractive. Still, her ego refuses to let her accept his love, and instead focuses on having the breakfast prepared for her. Being a prisoner of war, Sira thinks that Veor will give her an awful breakfast to humiliate her. However, when she actually goes out, her jaw drops at the sight in front of her. Seeing the giant slab of roasted fatty meat, she starts foaming at the mouth, since her impoverished nation could never afford so much meat. Veor thinks that Sira must be hungry, so he gives her 10 pounds of meat, thinking it's a normal size for human knights. In reality, the chunk of meat is bigger than Sira's torso, which is more meat than she eats in an entire year. Sira thinks that Veor is trying to bribe her into accepting him with this delicious feast, so she swears that she'd rather die than accept this gift. Unfortunately, her stomach roars in protest, so Sira gets embarrassed enough to ask for death again. Veor gets confused why she seeks death at every minor inconvenience and reminds her that if her stomach is growling for good, it means that her body wants to live. Finally, he tells her to stop overthinking and just accept the meal. Meanwhile, Cersei goes to Sira and explains that although Veor is acting all nonchalant, he actually went out to hunt this meat specifically for her. She reminds Sira that Veor is also a noble among barbarians, so if she refused his kind gift, it would be bad etiquette. Sira takes this bait to accept his gift, and when she finally takes a bite, the juicy meat instantly captures her heart. Sira literally starts crying since she has never eaten such tender meat before, and Veor notices how much she's enjoying it. As he notices her, she perks up and acts like the food is just okay. Then, she reluctantly forgives Veor for causing her the misunderstanding in the morning. After that, Sira also gets curious about the creature he got the meat from. Veor explains that the creature has already been butchered, so his men are cleaning up the rest of its hide outside. Sira peers out of the window, thinking that it would be some sort of juicy cattle. Instead, she's greeted by the sight of a vicious dragon. Shocked, she wonders if these are the dragons from legends which are supposed to breathe fire. Veor chuckles, explaining that although fire-breathing dragons exist, this one is just a herbivore. Then, he notices Sira polishing off all the meat even though she was shocked about its source. Once Sira finishes eating, Veor asks her to go outside with him. Sira still doesn't trust him, so she feels hesitant about going out. Veor wonders if she's simply scared of the beasts she'll see in the foreign land, so she gets angry and accepts his challenge. As Sira gets ready to go out, she still warns Veor that she doesn't trust him. He accepts her warning, but he still thinks that she will love the scenery outside. Soon, as Sira steps out of the house, she is stunned to see a peaceful meadow thriving with wildlife. Veor notices her surprise, so he explains that although their battlefield was a wasteland, the rest of barbarian lands are full of life. Then, Veor starts walking to show her another sight, so Sira mentally prepares herself for the surprises up ahead. While they take a walk through the forest, Sira curiously looks around at all the wildlife around them. Up above, she spots a dragon flying in the sky, so Veor explains that they're simply a normal animal living in their lands. Although it's difficult to hunt dragons, they usually don't bother the barbarians as long as they don't venture into their lairs. Sira is annoyed that Veor is treating these terrifying beasts so casually, but he reminds her that she just ate one for breakfast. Embarrassed, Sira grows silent and continues walking. Soon, she hears a soft humming sound in the distance and wonders what it is. As she gets closer to the sound, she gets shocked to see a pristine, clear waterfall. Shocked, Sira blurts out that she's never seen one before, so Veor wonders if her kingdom doesn't have any waterfalls. Sira grows defensive and starts to deny it, but then she remembers that the Eldoran kingdom truly does not have these natural sights. Veor feels bad and reassures that he only wanted to show her the beautiful waterfall, not brag about his land's resources. Then, he suddenly takes off his shirt and tells Sira to do the same. Shocked, she wonders why, so Veor tells her that they must get into the water together. With her perverted mind, Sira starts to picture some illegal activities, but Veor explains that he simply wants her to take a bath. Still, she reminds him that a man and a woman bathing together is completely unacceptable. Veor tells her the barbarians don't share her culture, so he doesn't care if they're together. Cersei also gets close to Sira and reminds her that she hasn't had a bath after her bloody fight on the battlefield. She points out that if she doesn't bathe soon, her grimy body will stink up their entire place. Finally, Sira agrees to take a bath, but she sends Veor somewhere else so he can't see her. Cersei accompanies Sira to the bath, so she thinks that she's keeping an eye on her. However, Cersei tells her that she's actually watching her to ensure her safety. Sira feels confused, but suddenly, a massive snapping turtle pops out in front of nowhere. Terrified, she clings to a rock, and Cersei tells her that there are many more weird creatures here that will scare her. Still, she wonders why Sira is so scared since these creatures are peaceful animals. Suddenly, Sira notices a bunch of eldritch monstrosities that look more like something out of horror stories than animals, and she runs away from the terrifying waterfall. Cersei feels worried about her, but she doesn't give chase when she realizes where Sira is headed. Meanwhile, after Sira stops panicking, she realizes that she left her clothes back at the waterfall. Suddenly, a bird cries loudly, which breaks her train of thought. Then, Sira prepares to head back to get her clothes. However, a strange man calls out to her, so she wonders if it's finally time for her to lose her innocence to some strange barbarian. As the man approaches her, she instinctively backs off and tells him to stay away. He refuses to listen and gets closer, so Sera finally catches a glimpse of his handsome face. She starts comparing the handsome stranger to the men back in her kingdom, but then she remembers that she's still naked in a towel. Sera tells the man to stay back again, but he remains standing in place. Instead, he notices how pathetic she's looking and figures out that she must have run away from her bath after getting scared. Thankfully, the young man doesn't mock her for being scared. He reveals that his mother was also a woman from the West, so she would get scared in the bath just like Sera. His mother used to tell him stories about her kingdom, which lacked wildlife and nature, just like Sera's homeland. Surprised, Sera wonders if this barbarian's mother was a missing female knight captured during her grandfather's expedition. While she's lost in her thoughts, the young man puts his own clothes around her. Then, he tells her to go back with him so they can find her clothes. Sera feels surprised that a barbarian could be such a gentleman, and wonders if Veor is just a special, deranged case. Meanwhile, the man notices that her face is red, so he gets close to check if she has a fever. Being a noble maiden, Sera feels completely flustered by his touch. The man thinks that her fever is too intense, so she can't hike all the way back down the mountain. He scoops her into his arms to carry her down. Soon, Circe finds both of them standing together and wonders how her master Veor managed to tame Sera so easily. Hearing his name, Sera finally realizes that the young man holding her is none other than Veor with a shaved beard. He grins, pleased to see how shocked she is. Enraged by his deception, Sera slaps Veor, who happily praises her for producing so much more. As they walk back home, Circe wonders if Veor will be okay, while Sera warns him that she would have challenged him to a duel if she had her sword. Then, she blames him for her panic since he brought her to such a dangerous area. However, Circe explains that the wildlife around them is all peaceful, since Veor personally patrols the area to make sure it's clear of any dangerous beasts. Veor also explains that he bathed alone since Sera wanted privacy, or else he would have protected her. Sera then wonders if creatures like dragons are dangerous enough to guard against. Veor explains that although dragons are strong, they're usually cowardly and they don't provoke people by themselves. However, Circe points out that only Veor is strong enough to consider dragons cowards. He then turns to Sera, pleased that he got to see a new side of her. Embarrassed by his attention, Sera forgives him as thanks for the beautiful scenery and leaves the area in a rage. On the way back home, she thinks it won't be too bad being Veor's wife, since he's so handsome without a beard. Unfortunately, just a few days later, she finds him back with a full beard, putting his looks back to square one. A few days later, Sera impatiently listens as Veor invites her to a meeting with his clan members. He shows her the meeting venue, which is the barbarian race's oldest and largest settlement, called the Lakeside Village. Sera notes the village's location, but then she wonders why Veor is leaking potential military intel to her. She wonders if Veor is underestimating her and reminds him that she could always escape to her homeland and leak this information to her military. As Veor hears her warning, he starts laughing loudly. He reminds Sera that she was love-struck with his shaven face just a few days ago, so there's no way she'd want to hurt him. He also thinks that he can easily make her his wife, so he's not worried about her leaking any sensitive information. While the two of them argue non-stop, Circe notes that they're already acting like a married couple. After some time, they all reach the meeting spot, where Sera finds herself surrounded by 100 intimidating men, armed to the teeth. Every single one of the seasoned barbarians begs Veor to give them a chance at testing their blade against the female captain. Sera thinks that her time has finally come since the barbarians want to kill her as revenge for defeating their comrades. However, Veor tells the barbarians to back off and give her a proper welcome into their tribe. At their leader's command, all of the hot-blooded barbarians calm down and give Sera some space. Seeing their cheerful looks, Sera wonders why they're all gathered here if they didn't want to kill her. Veor explains that they're simply here to give her a welcome, hoping to get a sparring match with her. This confuses her even more, and she asks Veor why none of the barbarians want revenge. To answer her question, Veor asks the barbarians themselves if they hold any hatred for Sera. All of them seriously declare that they bear no ill will, and they line up in a warrior's formation to welcome her into the tribe. Sera still doesn't trust the barbarians, thinking that they're just following their leader's orders. Still, she follows both Veor and Circe into the formation. While they're walking, suddenly, one of the barbarians bursts into tears and breaks formation behind Sera. Inspired by her bravery, he praises her for her incredible display display of martial arts on the battlefield. Sira is completely speechless as more barbarians begin chiming in, praising both her beauty and skills. She gets completely flustered by all this praise from her enemies, but Veor reminds her that all barbarians respect strength no matter who it belongs to. Stunned, she continues following him deeper into the village. While walking around, she observes a peaceful community engaging with animal processing. Suddenly, Veor stops in front of a house where water is being boiled. He tells Cersei and Sira that they'll stay in this house while he handles a meeting with the elders. Then, he announces his presence to the house residents. Soon, a kind lady pops out of the house, wondering what Veor wants. He introduces Sira as his wife to her and tells her to take care of Sira while he's gone. Surprised, the lady instantly falls for Sira's charming beauty. She drags her inside to take care of her, not even bothering to listen to the poor girl's complaints. Inside, the lady apologizes for being so forceful, but Sira forgives her. Then, she calls to her son, Gatter, and orders him to bring some medicinal herbs for her. As the little boy struggles to rummage through a big box, his mother holds up the cover for him to help him search. Soon, he pulls out a herb pouch, and the lady brings it over to some boiling water to make tea. Sira wonders if it's normal for barbarians to put herbs in their tea, and the lady nods. Then, the woman next to her notes that they'll need more boiled water to make enough tea for everyone. She sends her kids to grab some more firewood. So Sira is impressed that the young barbarian children are already taught to be so strong and independent. The kids' mother doesn't think much of it, saying that they're just copying their elders. Then, once the tea is done, Sira takes a sip. She admits that the tea is better than she expected, with the herbal taste refreshing her body. Cersei thinks that the herbs taste good because they come from the special sacred tree. Once Sira finishes her cup, she eagerly asks for another one. Afterward, she notices that the two mothers living in the house aren't related. She wonders if they're the only people living in the house and asks if their husbands are working in the military outside. However, the woman surprises her by revealing that both of them are widows. She explains that their husbands lost their lives in a battle against the West, so Sira feels guilty about the crimes of her own people. Even though she knows that the Western army was fighting to get resources for her own people, Sira still feels bad that they ruined innocent lives. She apologizes to both mothers for her army, thinking they have every right to be angry at her. However, the barbarian woman feels confused because she thinks they want revenge. Sira reminds them that it was her people who killed their husbands and points out that it may have very well been herself. Hearing this, the women finally grow silent. Then, the eldest of them speaks out. Although she feels sad that her youngest son couldn't see his father's face, she still thinks it's a blessing that he was present for his father's funeral. Ever since then, she remained grateful for her son and continued to raise him with love and care. She also points out that if it weren't for war, barbarian men would lose their lives in other risky adventures like caves, monster fighting, or dragon hunting. Even if they didn't lose their lives, the barbarian warriors could end up disabled forever. So she thinks that it's normal for their women to lose their husbands so often. Hearing this, Sira is completely stunned, and she wonders if all barbarians treat the loss of a person's life so casually. Suddenly, an alarm bell rings out in the town as the guard towers detect an incoming attack. Inside the house, Cersei realizes what's happening and warns everyone that they're under attack. Before anyone can react, a flying creature bursts into the house from above. Once the smoke clears, Sira finds herself staring at a winged dragon with a large beak. Cersei notes that the dragon is called a Tsukubaikshi, and it's attracted to the smoke from burning firewood. Sira realizes that their tea party caused this creature to attack, but Cersei points out that the dragons don't normally invade their village since they know the warriors would kill them. Unfortunately, they've got no time to investigate. Since Gatter gets scared of the dragon and starts crying in his mother's arms, the sound of the boys crying grabs the dragon's attention, so Sira gets ready for a fight. Cersei tells Sira to escape the village since she's Veor's precious wife. However, Sira firmly refuses. She gets angry at Cersei for treating the lives of her other people as expendable and focusing on just a single other person. She then reminds Cersei that she's not a fragile princess to be shielded. With her pride as an Eldoran knight captain, Sira bravely faces the dragon with a pair of hot tongs. As the creature roars at her, she knocks it back by using the tongs as a baseball bat. Cersei feels shocked and warns Sira that she can't defeat the dragon with a measly cooking tool. However, Sira doesn't want to argue anymore, and she tells Cersei to just run away. She also also notes that the dragon's strike wasn't nearly as powerful as Veor's sword, so she feels confident that she can defeat it. Determined to protect the people behind her, Sera jumps behind the dragon's face and she stabs it square in the eye. While Cersei continues watching her, Sera orders her to leave and stop wasting her time. Finally, Cersei realizes that she's endangering Sera's life by distracting her, and she leaves the house at last. After Cersei leaves, Sera taunts the dragon to face her. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, the barbarian warriors tie down another dragon. With the creature restrained, Veor charges up and cuts off its neck. Then, he asks the soldiers how many other dragons are invading the village. One soldier informs him that there are still 3 other dragons left, so Veor tells him to search for any villager who hasn't evacuated yet. The soldier agrees. While Veor thinks that Sera must be safe since Cersei would have helped her escape, after addressing his own worries, he rallies the barbarians to cover the rest of the village and takes down 2 more of the remaining dragons. After defeating the other 2, Veor wonders where the last one is. Suddenly, Cersei comes rushing to him without Sera behind her. She tells Veor that a dragon attacked the house where they were staying, and before she can even complete her sentence, Veor flies past her. Near the house, Sera runs away from the dragon, realizing that the flying creature is faster than her out in the open. Unable to escape its fast speed, she turns around and prepares for a last stand. Although the dragon is also exhausted from the long fight, it still lunges towards Sera at a blinding speed. This time, its sharp beak breaks the tongs, leaving Sera with nothing to defend herself. Finally, she thinks that after taking pity on her defenseless enemies, she can die as a knight with her honor still intact. As the dragon approaches her to deliver the final blow, Sera closes her eyes, not even bothering to put up a struggle. But right when she prepares for death, Veor comes rushing behind her, screaming at her to cover her ears. Shocked, Sera does as she is told, and suddenly, Veor roars loudly at the dragon. His booming voice blows the poor creature's eardrums out, and Veor takes this chance to slice it apart. Watching the dragon fall in front of her, Sera remains stunned as Veor apologizes for being late. He then sincerely thanks her for risking her own life to save his precious people. Finally, Veor expresses his relief that she's still okay. Hearing the sincere concern in his voice, tears start flowing down Sera's face. At this moment, she feels confused as to why she's crying, but the tears continue pouring down. Veor silently smiles at her and then carries her back to the village, knowing she's in no condition to be walking. As Cersei notices him returning, she yells out in joy, while Sera allows Veor to treat her like a princess. Later that night, the barbarians hold a feast to celebrate Sera's victory and the defense of their village. While Sera tries to forget what happened, she still feels embarrassed about crying in Veor's arms like a little girl just a few hours back. At this moment, Cersei praises her for protecting her people. She admits that she never expected a smug noble from the West to risk their own life for others, so now she sees Sera in a different light. Hearing this, Sera finally forgives herself for acting a little spoiled after her life and death battle. Then, her attention shifts to how manly Veor looked when saving her. While Sera gets something else to blush about, a tiny fairy calls out to her. When Sera turns towards the voice, she spits out her drink in shock, thinking she's hallucinating from stress. However, the 3 fairies start dancing in front of her, so she finally realizes that they're real. Then, Veor approaches her, saying that she's about to get an even bigger surprise. Behind him, a bunch of tribal elders from different races show up to meet Sera for the first time. Seeing all the dwarves, elves, and spirits, Sera feels like she's been teleported into a fantasy world. Nearby, one of the dwarf elders gives her a sword as a meeting present for the barbarian chief's wife. Sera refuses the gift out of courtesy, but Veor tells her that she'll snatch it in a heartbeat after seeing its masterful craftsmanship. She hesitates, but finally takes a look at the blade. After careful observation, Sera notes that the blade is beautifully crafted, while still retaining its sharp edge to provide cutting power in a fight. As she admires the blade's body, the dwarven blacksmith explains that he crafted it from a precious metal known as mithril. Sera is surprised, and the dwarf starts bragging even more about his work. However, Veor interrupts them to introduce all of the new chiefs to Sera. He starts with the dwarves, who are the elders of the Quefto clan, known as Vas, Guans, and Balhath. Then, he introduces the Ixt elder Karka and the spirit elder as Nimhala. Finally, Veor introduces the fairy chief Vufumek to Sera, who feels like she's dreaming. Veor reassures her that they're all real, but Sera feels nervous around around them. Karka tells her to relax, knowing that it's her first time seeing creatures so strange. Then, Nimhala gives her a special tea blend to enjoy, but she reveals that it's even stronger than medical sedatives. Hearing the chatter of these magical creatures, Sira admits that she is learning about a whole new side of the world. Veor explains that she never saw them before because the magical creatures avoid the West, so Sira wonders why they're now meeting her so eagerly. Veor reminds her that he specifically arranged this meeting so the elders could get to know her. He reveals that after his own barbarian tribe, called the Cornum tribe, the other 4 tribes join with them to form the 5 Great Tribes Alliance. Although Veor is the future Great Chief of the 5 tribes, this position is only chosen after a ritual performed by the spirits. He explains that since the 5 tribes each have their own skills and cultures to offer, they live in harmony and support each other with their strengths and rely on the others to cover for their weaknesses. However, he completely ruins the serious mood by claiming that the alliance doesn't really do anything unless the 5 tribes are in a grave crisis. Then, Sira wonders if the invasion from her kingdom counted as grave crises for the alliance. Hearing this, all the tribal chiefs start laughing, and Veor apologizes to Sira for their response. He explains that the alliance doesn't get involved in territorial disputes, so Sira wonders if their wars simply look like animal fights to them. Veor thinks that people aren't much different from animals anyway, so she shouldn't feel embarrassed about it. He also points out that the alliance was created for a different purpose. Sira wonders what it is, so Veor reveals that there is a threat far greater than the dangerous dragons she has seen. Although dragons can be strong and hard to defeat, Veor explains that there are creatures called fiends which are living menaces to society. Even the mighty Veor admits that he'd rather fight 1,000 wars against Ildoran than fight a group of vicious fiends. Sira wonders what kind of monsters are terrifying enough to scare him, and even the tribal chiefs lose their cheerful attitude at the thought of facing them. To change the topic, the chiefs go back to celebrate and encourage Veor to build a successful legacy with Sira. Veor reassures Sira that the elders genuinely respect her. He reveals that all the gifts she's wearing, including her clothes and necklace, were handcrafted by the elders to welcome her to their tribes. Then, Karka also reveals that he enchanted her sword so it will always repair itself automatically. Sira wonders if such a thing is possible, but Veor reassures her that Ixt magic is very powerful. Seeing how the different races collaborate with their strengths to support each other, Sira starts thinking that the barbarian lands aren't a bad place at all. The next day, Circe wakes up Sira with a scare. After getting up, she wonders if her meeting with the magical creatures last night was a dream. However, Sira spots the enchanted sword nearby, so she knows the meeting was real. Behind her, Veor comes over to greet her. When Sira turns around, she gets flustered because he shaved his beard again. Veor enjoys her flustered reaction, and he turns around after calling her for lunch. Circe suddenly shoves a sandwich into Sira's mouth. Sira realizes that the sandwich is delicious. She wonders where the meat came from, so Circe tells her that it's from the same dragon she killed. Sira thinks that barbarian poultry is great, while Circe is shocked that she's treating dangerous dragons like common birds. After Sira eats her fill, Veor asks her to come with him to meet someone she knows. Sira wonders who would know her in the barbarian tribe, but Veor lets it remain a surprise. Sometime later, they reach an ordinary house where a woman awaits them. The lady greets Sira with a smile and praises her for defending an ordinary family from a ferocious dragon. Sira wonders who she is since she can't recognize her at all. Hearing this, the lady realizes she has changed over the past few years. She explains that she's Nylia, a former knight who served under Sira a few years ago. Hearing her name, Sira recalls Nylia, who was a passionate young woman. Ever since coming under her service, Nylia acted as Sira's right-hand man and joined her for many important operations. Together, the two of them fought bravely against the barbarians, both of them wanting to get their resources for the Ildoran kingdom. Unfortunately, during one mission, Sira was separated from Nylia, who was defeated by a barbarian soldier and taken captive. As she recalls this, Sira's jaw drops, and she wonders if the woman standing in front of her really is the Nylia from all those years ago. She then notices Nylia's huge belly, who tells her that she's pregnant with her second child. Hearing this, Sira's whole world turns upside down, so Nylia takes her inside her house to catch up. There, she explains that after the barbarians started talking about the Crystal Helmet Knight, she figured they had captured her former captain. Sira is surprised that she found a husband to settle with. Nylia explains explains that the soldier who defeated her also proposed to her, so she accepted his offer and settled in his village. After living her past years so peacefully with her husband and family, she feels like her days as a hot-blooded young knight belong to another person. Sira wonders why she asked Veor to invite her here, since a common person shouldn't call the great chief to run ordinary errands. However, Nylea explains to her that barbarians don't have such formalities about status. She also thinks that Veor is quite a helpful young man, so she often asks him for his help. Hearing this, Sira thinks she's joking since Veor looks like an old uncle. However, Nylea then tells her that he's only 18 years old, which leaves her completely stunned. Sira starts coping and claims that a boy as young as Veor could never have a full beard. Veor doesn't mind her teasing, and he explains that he helps Nylea a lot since her husband is his cousin. Still, Sira refuses to move past his young age, so Nylea points out that Sira turns 26 this year. While Sira feels exposed, Veor thinks her age is perfect for marriage. Sira still refuses to accept his compliment, so Veor wonders if he could have convinced her to marry him if she had met him at a younger age. Suddenly, Sira smacks her blade down and declares that no matter which time they had met, she would never become the wife of an enemy. Veor is stunned for a bit, but then he starts laughing at her serious display. Suddenly, he apologizes to Sira for being rude. Cersei wonders why Veor's attitude shifted for no reason, so Nylea asks her how injured Sira was when the barbarians captured her. Cersei reveals that Sira wasn't injured at all, but her sword had shattered during the fight. Hearing this, Nylea points out that Veor couldn't truly defeat Sira, and he only destroyed her blade. She explains that in normal circumstances, a knight and a warrior may fight to the death, or until the other party is unable to fight any longer. However, in Veor's case, despite his incredible strength advantage over Sira and his durable enchanted sword, he only won because her ordinary sword was destroyed, not because he actually landed a hit on her. Nylea points out that if Veor were to fight Sira with the same equipment, the next fight might just end in his own death. Hearing this, Cersei gulps in shock, but Nylea admits that having better equipment than the opponent is also a war strategy. She also recalls that Veor didn't use his thundering voice against Sira, so perhaps he could turn things around in a real fight. Still, she thinks that Veor can't brag about defeating her at all, which leaves him completely embarrassed. Sira remains silent, so Veor feels grateful that fate allowed him to defeat her that day. Soon, Nylea's husband, Vidal, returns home. His face lights up in joy at seeing Veor. Vidal then hands over his son to Nylea, who holds him close, watching their peaceful family together. Sira recalls her days with Nylea as a knight. Back then, Nylea was determined to destroy the barbarians and seize their lands for her own people, but now she has settled down with the very same people in a very peaceful life. Sira admits that Nylea looks a lot happier as a housewife than a bloodthirsty soldier, but she quickly gets embarrassed by her own thoughts. Then, Vidal and Nylea get up to make dinner for them. Later that night, Sira is alone with her thoughts at the beach. When Veor walks up to her, she admits that she used to know nothing about the lands of the barbarians. Despite her ignorance, Sira marched forward with the intention of killing these innocent people and seizing their lands, although she still hopes to bring back something useful to save her own people. Sira admits that fighting the innocent tribes is wrong. She admits that Veor doesn't deserve to be treated as an enemy, but she also declares that she's still loyal to the people of her kingdom. With the duty to her people on her shoulders, Sira thinks there's no way she can marry Veor. He thinks that her feelings are valid, but suddenly, Sira admits that her personal feelings are different from her professional duties as a knight, as she shyly suggests that marriage wouldn't be so bad. Veor teases her for saying one thing and changing her mind in the next second. The next day, Veor teases her about her actions last night. Sira claims that it was just in the heat of the moment, so Veor acts disappointed. However, she finally realizes that she can't hide her feelings and admits that those feelings came from the bottom of her heart. Meanwhile, near the barbarian lands, a team of priests from the Eldoran kingdom, led by priestess Malchus, advances towards Sira's location. Malchus mutters under her breath, furious that the savage barbarians continue to kidnap her nation's heroines and keep blocking their resources. As the team continues to move, they suddenly stop after seeing a bush rustling nearby. All of the exhausted soldiers prepare themselves for another dragon, but they relax after seeing it's just a deer. Even in this dangerous situation, Malchus remains calm and holds out a thick spellbook. She reminds the soldiers that even if they are surrounded surrounded by the strongest enemies, they can win using their magic powers. However, everyone doesn't believe the arrogant Malchus's words. They remind her that they're all running out of supplies, and it won't be long before the dangerous lands completely exhaust them. Facing her subordinates' protests, Malchus gets even bolder. She questions their dignity as soldiers and wonders if they're all happy to return home as failures, just like every other expedition team. As the soldiers grow silent, Malchus declares that the only way they can return victorious is by rescuing their precious knight Sira and conquering the barbarian lands once and for all. Meanwhile, back at home, Sira keeps herself busy by chopping firewood with her new sword. Circe wonders why she's working so hard, so Sira tells her that her warrior skills will grow dull if she stays inside the house all day. Circe realizes that Sira is simply bored of her peaceful life, and Sira admits that she misses all the combat and strategy meetings. Then, Circe reminds her that if she's so bored of living peacefully every day, she can help her out with all the house chores. Hearing this, Sira explains that she doesn't know how to do them since her grandfather never let her do dirty grunt work. After learning about Sira's privileged lifestyle, Circe tells her that she won't be bored for the day. She points to the distance, where a group of barbarians is approaching their house from. Soon, a pack of barbarians led by Veor stops in front of the house, and Veor himself asks Sira if she wants to spar with the warriors of his village. Circe explains that this was Veor's meat-headed way of fighting Sira's boredom, but Sira is excited beyond belief at the chance of fighting real warriors. Before they can begin fighting, Veor asks Circe to bring out Sira's armor. Sira is surprised that they still have her knight armor, so Circe explains that she simply cleaned and stored it after taking it off her body. Unfortunately, the crystal guard on Sira's helmet is still broken, so she can only wear the rest of the armor. Still, Sira is impressed that Circe was able to take the armor off her unconscious body, since Eldoran armor requires proper training to wear and remove. Once Sira is ready, she goes out and welcomes all the challengers ready to fight her. Seeing the legendary crystal helmet in person, all the barbarian warriors get eager to fight. However, they all have to wait their turn since the sparring will be one-on-one. For the first match, a courageous young soldier called Raham goes up to face Sira. Veor introduces both opponents to each other. Then, he signals the start of the match, and Raham tells Sira to fight him with everything she's got. Unfortunately, she actually listens to him. She ends up defeated on the ground after just a single move. Then, Raham's father steps up to avenge his son, but he also gets destroyed just as easily. After these two chumps go down, a proper warrior called Ciro goes up to face Sira. Before they can start fighting, Ciro thanks her for defeating the bird-headed dragon. He explains that the people Sira protected that day were actually his relatives, so he's immensely grateful to her. Sira feels surprised, but then Ciro puts on his helmet to get ready for their fight. He charges in and lashes out with his dual swords, but Sira blocks both of his attacks before knocking him down. Watching the experienced soldier lose so easily, the barbarians are shocked by Sira's strength. Then, she goes on to defeat every other barbarian warrior except Veor himself. Watching the fights, even Circe is shocked by Sira's power. Viewfumek explains that Sira is so strong because of her willpower. Circe doesn't understand the concept of willpower, so Viewfumek tells her that every race in the 5 great tribes has a long lifespan, with the exception of the Cornum barbarians. Because the other races live so long, they have a cheerful and laid-back attitude. However, the barbarians do not have the luxury of long lives, so they are a lot more passionate and courageous about achieving their goals. Because of this, they are able to fight all out with their willpower, which is a strong desire to fulfill their dreams. In the end, when there is a battle between 2 evenly matched warriors, victory comes to the person with the stronger will to win. As the fairy explains this, Veor and Sira have their own sparring match. Finally, the fight goes on for longer than 2 moves as both warriors clash evenly, with their willpowers blazing. Neither side backs down, and they continue to give it their all. In the end, both Sira and Veor break their wooden training swords, so the match ends in a tie. All of the barbarians cheer for the amazing fight, and Veor feels relieved that he can still hold his own against Sira when fighting with the same equipment. He then asks her if she's still bored. Sira feels incredibly refreshed after all the amazing fights, so she thanks Veor for helping her. Just then, an old man rushes over in a panic, announcing that an injured land dragon is moving towards their village. With no time to waste, Veor heads out with Sira, and the barbarians dragons to handle this new threat. As they all wait in the forest, Sira notes that the dragon is much stronger than the bird heads she fought in the village. Still, she wonders why so many dragons are attacking the village despite being peaceful creatures. Even the bird heads knew to avoid the barbarians, so Sira wonders if an outside force is secretly manipulating these beasts to attack the barbarians. She then recalls how serious Veor looked when he learned about the appearance of this dragon. However, she gets no time to relax as the barbarian soldiers attract the rampaging dragon towards the trap. Once the beast appears, Sira prepares to take action, while Veor guides the soldiers to lure the dragon his way. As the dragon chases them, it steps on a trap in the ground and loses its footing. At the same time, some hidden men throw out giant ropes to restrain the creature. With the dragon bound in one place, Sira jumps out of her spot and lands on its head. Without giving it any time to free itself, she drives her sword straight into the creature's eye and head, killing it instantly. After the dragon goes down, all of the barbarians celebrate their victory. Then, they all start cleaning up the creature's corpse. Sira is impressed by the dragon's massive size, so Veor explains that this one is a true dragon compared to the bird heads. He reveals that a long time ago, the Morasubari dragon species used to have wings instead of 6 legs. Using the power of these wings, the dragons were able to fly in the sky. Sira feels terrified at the thought of such a large flying creature, and Veor tells her that there are still other dragons that can fly. He mentions the flying flame dragons of the mountains, which remind Sira of the fantastical creatures from fairy tales. Then, one of the men cleaning the dragon calls Veor to inspect it. He shows him a mark on the dragon's body, which seems to be the injury that caused it to go insane. Veor notes that although the wound is a strange burn mark, even elven magic cannot cause such an injury. Sira wonders if the injury was caused by magic, so Veor nods. However, he asks her if someone from Ildoran injured this dragon, since he's confident that none of the 5 tribes can use magic like this. Sira doesn't think any of her people can use such magic either, but then she remembers the church, known as the Order of Commoners. The priests of the church usually use their light magic to heal soldiers and pray at their funerals. Still, she has never heard of the church using such strange, offensive magic. Before they can discuss it further, Vufumek arrives to inform them that she has found some unknown magic users nearby. She mentions that these magic users are casting spells without an elemental catalyst, which can cause a curse called the Blight to appear. Hearing this, Veor is shocked, and he orders half of his men to quickly clean up the dragon and leave to guard the village back home. Sira wonders what a blight is, so Veor explains that blights appear when someone goes against the natural order, as a force that opposes nature itself. Wherever a blight appears, it summons a dangerous fiend. After hearing this name, Sira realizes that the magicians are creating a real threat to the barbarians. Nearby, Malchus and her soldiers struggle to fight a dragon. Despite her soldiers' weakness, she refuses to back down and takes out her spellbook. Meanwhile, Veor and the others rush towards the priest's location. As they arrive, they spot a dead dragon drop to the floor, freshly defeated by Malchus's spell. As Sira spots the deranged priestess closing her spellbook, she rushes towards her. Malchus is pleasantly surprised that Sira is alive and well, but when she notices Veor and the other barbarians, her expression changes. Veor wonders if Sira knows these people, so she explains that they're from her home kingdom. Watching them speak with such familiarity, Malchus is outraged and wonders if Sira has betrayed her nation. She reminds her that all barbarians are savages who deserve to die, but Sira tells her to calm down. However, the insane priestess refuses to change her worldview. She points out that the Ildoran kingdom has been trying for centuries to conquer the barbarian lands for their people, so there's no way they can ever stop. Then, she wonders if the barbarians have corrupted Sira's mind. Sira feels embarrassed by her accusation and makes it clear that she's not brainwashed. Still, it feels like she's talking to a brick wall, since Malchus refuses to listen. In the depths of her insanity, she starts chanting a malevolent spell to attack the barbarians. Seeing the spell's power, Sira realizes that all those dragons were provoked by Malchus and her magic. Meanwhile, Malchus declares to Sira that even fate supports the Ildoran kingdom since they are on the righteous side. However, Veor warns her that by refusing to use the power of earth and nature as catalysts for her magic, she has committed a grave mistake. Malchus remains silent, and then she asks Sira to return home with her. Sira refuses to go, so Veor asks Malchus if she's willing to negotiate negotiate things with him. This only serves to enrage Malchus, and she finally releases a powerful offensive spell to punish Syrah. Luckily, Veor stands in front of her to protect her from the attack. Despite taking the brunt of the attack head-on, Veor remains standing there without any injuries. Malchus thinks she has won, but then she realizes that her enemy is completely unharmed. Unimpressed, Veor warns her that a pathetic spell like hers could never penetrate his willpower. After declaring this, Veor pulls Syrah to his side, happy that she has chosen him. Seeing this, Malchus goes completely berserk and starts casting more and more magic to attack Veor. Under the intensity of her hatred, even the surroundings start to shake as an evil aura surrounds Malchus. Veofumek realizes that Malchus has corrupted the nature around them, while Veor notes that the insane priestess is beyond saving. All of a sudden, the evil aura around Malchus completely disappears, and dark tentacles emerge from the ground to trap her body. In an instant, the priestess is seized by a mass of unforgiving black rage. Syrah steps up to help Malchus, but Veor prevents her from going ahead. Despite Malchus's actions, Syrah still wants to stand up for a person from her kingdom. However, Veor explains in a grave voice that Malchus has summoned the Blight. In this moment, one of the tentacles approaches the terrified priestess, an ominous eye opening at its tip. In an instant, countless eyes open in the body of the dark tentacles, and Veor declares that a dangerous fiend has appeared. That was episode 5. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen. I heard that you addicted to these hands now, girl.